everybody? Seems like it's been a really busy day so far. My name is Krista Webster. I need to not do that. I am the CEO of a group of marketing, PR, and advertising agencies for a holding company called Stagwell. Possibly the toughest business you never want to get into, but you love, have a passion. And it's such a pleasure to be invited to be here today. I am the Toronto girl who used to live in New York for a long time. And this is an Aritzia dress, in case any of you were asking, because there seems to be a lot of that. Good Canadian company, so there you go. So I am joined by an amazing panel that I'm going to introduce in a matter of moments. There is one that is still outstanding, so hopefully she will get here. Okay, so just to provide context for today, women entrepreneurs are active change agents, as I think we would all agree, to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Despite recent progress in strengthening women's entrepreneurship, women entrepreneurs face many challenges. Research has shown that female founders outperform their male peers, but male founders tend to start more businesses and raise more capital than women. I think we've all heard this story many times over. With this in mind, it's a pleasure to be joined by such an accomplished group of panelists in discussing the challenges women face when starting their businesses and how women can lead the way for a sustainable future and thriving economy. Welcome, ladies. Very quickly, I want to introduce, first and foremost, Shaloo to the left. She is the Managing Director at Microsoft Startups. Milka, who is the CEO at Perfecto Lab. And Sanja, who is the co-founder and managing partner at S4S Ventures. Welcome, ladies. Okay. So I'm going to start with, I'm being told to.
Take that out.
Now I have to unload. Okay, this is becoming. All right.
That's okay. What's a panel without Amy Perella?
Right.
I know. Technology.
Thankfully, we're at Microsoft, so it's good. Okay.
You missed those.
Hello? Hello? There we go. Okay.
There we go. Much better.
There we go. Okay, so because of differences in lifetime earnings between women and men, countries are currently losing 172 trillion in wealth. Conversely, if women were earning as much as men, human capital wealth could increase by about 1/5 globally. So Milka, this question is for you. Why is economic empowerment important for women to achieve security and stability around the world?
Okay, so thank you Krista, and thank you everybody. Why is economic empowerment so important for women around the world? I think when we're talking about net zero and we're talking about the environment, often people realize that when you go to villages and towns across the world, people are not, and women are often not that concerned around the environment. They are more concerned around feeding their children, right? So as long as a community, right, we don't address the main point of how to give economic freedom to women and to people in general, it is extremely hard for us to ask of them to even, go into sectors like entrepreneurship, to worry about the environment if their basic needs are not being met.
Great point.
Does anybody want to add to that?
Sure. Hey everyone, adding to what she said, but before I do that, I just wanted to thank the World Women Foundation for organizing this. It's a topic near and dear to our heart. Women's economic empowerment is also critical because it is a path to reducing poverty, right? So more women in the workforce. We would love to see more and more young girls being educated. I think one of the panelists earlier talked about education. So net-net, economic empowerment for women is not necessarily financial independence, but it's also reducing poverty and then impacting the GDP across the world.
Okay. Okay, so let's get then to a more specific topic as it relates to economic empowerment, and that is the disparity in terms of supporting women from a capital standpoint. So women-led startups also receive significantly less funding than their male counterparts. Globally, only 7% of venture capital is invested in women-led businesses, and arguably that could be contested that number is actually high, and not the reality. This disparity is neither justified by differences in the founders' profiles, such as the level of education, nor by differences in profits. So, Sanja, I'll start with you. How do you view this data, and what impact does it have on entrepreneurship amongst women?
Yeah, so I will echo and say that the actual numbers, the recent numbers are actually much worse than that. So if we look at last year alone, female founders, female CEOs, so teams, new entrepreneurs coming in, female-founded teams received only 2% of venture capital funding. 2%. That is actually a decline from a year previously, where it was 2.7%. So we're talking about a high of nearly 3% and a low of 2%. I mean, the numbers are abysmal. And they haven't changed. They haven't changed in about 30 years. So even though there's been much more effort put into this area, we've had many more conversations around venture capital and gender equality, the reality is that numbers are not moving. And even if you say, okay, well maybe female entrepreneurs alone is a strict standard, let's take a step back and look at male and female teams. Those teams receive about 15% of funding. So even when a man is introduced into a founding team, the numbers are not that much bigger. So what is the problem? The problem is that female founders encounter mostly male VCs. The venture capital industry is notoriously led by men. The odds of you seeing a founding partner of a VC firm is very low. There's only 2% of VC funds that are led by women, so I'm not going to be a unicorn. It's very difficult industry to break into. And so when it comes down to it, it's sort of like, you have to take a step back and say, well, is it about the female founders, or is it the people who are writing the checks? And if you take a step back, you realize it's actually the bias in the check writing category. The venture capital industry is focused on risk. And anytime you're dealing with risk, people tend to fund people that they feel more comfortable with. People tend to make interpersonal decisions that tend to be very gender biased. So you sort of think, well, Mark Zuckerberg, need to find one of those. Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber, need to find one of those. So your sort of psychological references are very male dominated and fit a very particular archetype of a person. And we know from academic research, from the research of actually studying who gets funded, that if you have a female check writer, so if it's a female that's evaluating the pitch, women are 2 times as likely to fund a female founder and 3 times as likely to fund a female CEO. So it really matters who's writing the check. So it's a very difficult environment in which to fundraise. So even when they're successful, female founders, female entrepreneurs, tend to raise only a quarter of the money that they're trying to raise, whereas the men receive half. And the valuations that they get for their companies tend to be lower. So there's even a penalty if you get past the initial point of raising the funding that you need to get started. And why this is so important is because entrepreneurship is usually the most vulnerable stage of a business. It's when you can't get funding from banks, it's where it's difficult to get traditional access to capital. So venture capital essentially fulfills the initial bridge of that stage where it's difficult to get institutional financing, and it tends to be much male dominated, and the numbers show a very dire picture and paint a real picture of difficulty.
So, speaking with you, getting to know you offline, you have beaten those odds and have been very successful in a short amount of time. So what advice would you give other women who are looking to raise capital, but from your vantage point, were there things that you wish you hadn't done, and things obviously that you've done and you double down on, just for perspective?
So for female entrepreneurs, I would just go ahead and say, try to get meetings with female VCs or firms that have women as partners, so they're in a position where they can actually write you a check. I mean, that's just based on statistics alone. That's not even advice. You improve your probability that you will actually get funding for your business. But from a funding side, so being a venture capitalist, I mean, this is not scientific, but you have to be a bulldog. That's the only way to actually break through. It's a notoriously difficult industry to get into because the founders tend to be institutional investors, very wealthy individuals, again, folks who are trying to assess risk. And anytime you are asking a person to take a bet on you, they look for those mental references of what does success look like. Which is why when there was a campaign about this time last year, you can't be it if you don't see it. That's why it's so important to show what female leadership looks like, what successful female CEOs look like. It all has a sort of effect that sort of asks you to sort of question whether or not your vision of what a $1 billion company looks like and what a CEO of that company looks like, it asks you to sort of pause and reflect whether or not there's some bias ingrained in that. So it helps a great deal.
Very helpful, Shaloo. You're seeing it from a similar vantage point, but on the other side, having, being the MD of startups at Microsoft. First of all, can you explain a little bit to the audience what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So I oversee the pre-IPO and the IPO business, which is primarily focused on Series C and above. And companies who have recently gone IPO, like Coinbase, for example, the crypto company. So we partner with them and we get deeper into how technology can help them even be successful. But I want to pick on what Sanja was just saying here. Somehow mentally, our dial is fixed on financial investment for female founders. We are so obsessed with getting funding for female founders. I have seen women do extremely well raising funds, but fail after that. So investing in women entrepreneurship is investing in change. That's the key thing, right? And when we say change, it's not just dollar invested. The top 3 challenges that female founders face today, and there's a lot of data that supports that. The biggest one is finance. Number 2 is mentors, role models. A successful female founder, let's say a pre-seed founder looking for even a use case like a seed founder, right? Someone who's relatively raised funds in the last year or so. And number 3, believe it or not, is technology, right? I think we're all blessed to be here in the US where we take technology for granted. I can text my daughter anytime and she will respond back to me. It's a luxury in developing countries. It's a luxury to even have a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old to have a phone. So the point comes back is how do we nurture entrepreneurship overall, right? How do we carry that flag, that entrepreneurship, and nurturing and fostering the entrepreneurship is not just about finance. So Sanja made a great point, you kind of have reference use cases in your mind around role models. I want to ask folks in this room, today if I come in and I'll say I have a $20 million fund, which is very small in places like New York City and Silicon Valley, right? But still, 20 million. And I'm willing to invest in whatever your idea is. I'm willing to take bets on you. Let's do some business. Do you really think you're going to be successful if I give you that check? Just take a pause, sit back, and think about it. Because the biggest question the VC struggles with is how do I make 7x and 10x out of that 20 million that I just gave you? And that comes with role models, it comes with technology, it comes with infrastructure support. And by infrastructure, I mean community. I mean World Women Foundation. What I mean is UN Women. A lot of organizations out there, and this is by no way shameless plug for those organizations, but it's really community support that fosters and encourages these women. And when I look around this room, I think we're all role models. The fact that we took the time to sit here today and listen to these conversations is what more and more entrepreneurs need out there.
So Milka, that was given what you also do as an entrepreneur. what do you think is the biggest detraction and attraction for women trying to start their own companies?
Yeah, so that's a very personal question, just because I've been in this journey for the last couple of years. And it's a very personal question because I come from a career in banking, so I spent quite a long time in banking. And I have a core, maybe 10, 20 female friends that I've gotten to know over the last 20 years. And I have to tell you that I am the only one that has decided to start her own company and nonprofit. And I see that, and I tell you one of the reasons that I think it is, okay? So when I decided to start by the way, Perfecto Lab is a nonprofit that teaches children in Latin America to code and technology. I'm 100% all about education. I think that is the future, but not only education, technology education. I could go on for ages on that topic. But when I look at, when I decided to start my organization a couple of years ago, it was in 2020, COVID hit, and I literally left my job, okay? And I had this idea that I needed to teach every single girl and child in Latin America to code. That was my mission, and it is to this day. So what did I do? What any entrepreneur would do? You quit your job. I moved to a town. Yes. I moved to a town in the Dominican Republic, and I started a school from scratch. I'm not a teacher, so if I want to go into education, I need to first teach myself, right? Just like every entrepreneur, you've heard stories of people, selling things in the street. That's what you do because you give yourself entirely. Now, I mentioned that story because that's very important. I'm in my late 30s, and I don't have any children. And that matters because when we talk about women and entrepreneurship, that is the reality. I was in my 20s when that book, Lean In, came out, and I leaned in, right? And I believed everything that we could, do it all. But the truth of the matter is that there are limitations. I started the answer with none of my female friends. A lot of my male friends are entrepreneurs, and they've been helping me through this journey. But none of my female friends are. And the reason is because they have a 2-year-old at home, right? And I think that we have to, when we talk about entrepreneurship in women, we have, at the end of the day, we have to face that reality. With that said, one last point. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have a 2-year-old and 5-year-old home. If you have a passion inside your heart that you wake up and that's all you think about, all of that. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, because I wake up and all I think about, okay, how are those children doing, the school that I have in the Dominican Republic, how are we going to get more opportunities to children throughout Latin America? And that's my life, right? So that's my baby.
Well, that brings a whole other topic, because I think I've had the privilege of moderating many panels with entrepreneurial women. Very few of them have been moms, and very few have pointed to me that when they are being entrepreneurial, that they're running smaller businesses. They're afraid to get to the big businesses. And so we can't solve that today, but that is a reality. The dirty underbelly, so to speak, of what we don't want to say as women to each other is that that's a reality. And so what do we think the hope is for that? Is it that we create and institutionalize the idea of supporting and being open to women with and without children, and we all need to be more empathetic to it? Or is it about trying to change, pushing water uphill, and it's another 10 to 20 years before women who also choose to be mothers and also choose not to be mothers, because you paint it differently with that too, I think, are up against still a very patriarchal perception of what it should be.
Your story resonates with me just from the female entrepreneurs that I encounter on a day-to-day level, and from my own personal experience. So I think it matters a great deal, which is why family planning is so important. We're not going to touch politics, but it's important because it enables you to organize your life so you can achieve the things you want to achieve at a time when it makes sense for you. And the other point my dear colleague here made, which is the safety net, the community, the social system, the healthcare system. You have to have a fabric of institutions, of people in your life, in order to be able to organize your life that way. Otherwise, it's just too much. And nobody wants to talk about that, but look, there is such a thing as a plate that's too full. And I think a lot of female entrepreneurs feel that sooner rather than later because of the fact that everything's on their shoulders, because they're the ones that are carrying the burden of success. There's no line manager, there's no boss to shoulder what ends up happening. And I think that's a very intense and tiring feeling. And if you combine that with a very demanding domestic life, parental duties, it's really, really difficult. Most of the female entrepreneurs, there was a very interesting Harvard Business School article, 25-year-old research study, and the headline was, it was not just about female entrepreneurs, but sort of women who have prioritized their career. And the headline was, women can either have super supportive partners or none at all. And it's a 25-year-old study. It basically says either find the person that will be super supportive, or be on your own. And whether it's your choice or because that's what's going to end up happening, because they looked at divorce rates and so on and so forth. And so it's very real, and it's a very real barrier for female entrepreneurship. And if you look at, I've only looked at the US data, but it's quite fascinating. In the US, we actually have a pop of older females. I hate that terminology, but you see a pop of entrepreneurship once children leave home. And these female entrepreneurs, while they have a heck of a time fundraising, because they have the double whammy of being women and also being older women, so who's gonna write you a check? Back to my who's writing the checks example. But they are so much more successful than somebody who doesn't check the box of older and female. So statistics show that they are actually more likely to be successful than the opposite. And this, pop of entrepreneurship happens once children leave the house. So it underscores your point entirely. So unfortunately, women have many more decisions to think through than, I don't want to give the guys, a bad rap, but it's just different. It's just different because of the different roles we play.
And if you flip the Harvard Business Review title to males, either have a supportive partner or can be single. I mean, imagine the impact that it'll have in our society, right? And so this is not by any means pointing towards gender or gender bias, but that's the point of this conversation, which is women economic empowerment, right? It all comes back to, there are so many stigmas that exist in our society, and God only knows who created them. We all created them. We are all part of the system. But the question is, how do we challenge the status quo? And we keep coming back to it, is creating a community. Trust me, I work with so many female founders in developing economies, especially South Africa, Syrian refugee camps, right? Some amazing talent sitting in refugee camps. They sleep in tents at night. They get Wi-Fi for 1 hour every day, 1 hour. And they have brilliant ideas. I mean, brilliant ideas. But are they empowered to do what they want? No. And so that's the question I think we have to continuously keep asking ourselves, is how can we as individuals contribute to the betterment of the society that we live in?
I feel like this could be a panel unto itself, based on the audience too, but especially also the pop. I think that's a really interesting insight as well. So we're gonna go from mothers, partners, and all of that domesticity to possibly another stereotype that's called Mother Earth. So women-owned small and medium businesses constitute a huge potential for innovation and growth, reducing the impact of climate change and environmental degradation, and delivering economic equality for women and girls in a bold new way.
To advance progress towards net zero, climate neutral and green industries, and inclusive economies, how can we fully tap into women's abilities as an economic powerhouse for our #equal future? Shaloo, is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is listen. Listen to them, right? I work with many VCs. I mean, that's what I do day in, day out. And I'm VC fatigued, trust me, because the only question that they ask is, what's going to be my ROI? And when I say, well, there are a lot of female founders who are out there, and they say, well, we have a pipeline issue. I don't see, where are the female founders? I don't see anyone doing it, right? So back to your point around climate tech, and I would say even ag tech, there are so many forms of social impact and sustainability that's out there. The first thing is, they just have to show up and listen and actually look in the weeds that there is no pipeline issue. The second thing I would say is, I keep coming back to developing economies, and that's because maybe I've spent too much time there studying that market, and being here in the US, I just feel that we're extremely blessed. But I want to give you a very brief example of a founder that I met in Turkey. I met her about 4 years ago, and she had just come out of college. She had gone through some military training, and she came out and she said, and I ran into her actually. We have a local office there. I was there for a meeting. I was waiting for a cab downstairs, and she was waiting for her bus, and we just started talking. And she told me, she said, I have this big vision of getting clean water in my community. And I looked at her and I said, why is the water, what's the problem with the water? And she said, I lost my mom because, the water was dirty, and of course I won't get into details. She said, I want to do something, right? And I said, sure, if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. And she said, sure, do you have a card? I, of course, didn't have a card. I said, sure, connect with me on LinkedIn. And she did follow up. And these are the small things that we look for, are people who actually see through. It's the passion that, that brought her to me. And then I'll cut to the chase here, back to the question. Today, she has built a clean water solution in Turkey using IoT sensors. Okay? She comes from an army background. She has no technology. She's not, an engineer by profession, nothing. But she has that passion, right? And so the reason she has been successful, and she just got her pre-seed funding. Now, what did it take to get her pre-seed funding? It took an army of people. It took me. It took her local government. She was like, I'm going to raise a fund and I need to write a letter. And I'm like, what is the government doing in your funding? This is your business. And she said, no, that's how we work here, right? And so I think, again, coming back, is opening the system. When you spot talent, give it an opportunity. Listen to them. And even if there is something that you cannot provide directly, so what I did was I gave her some free credits from Microsoft with my friend sitting back there. We work together for quite a bit. We do that quite a bit, right? We see talent, we say, sure, and this is not selling Microsoft technology, it's everything is complimentary. We just give it away. Go build amazing solutions, right? And when you're ready, call us. And so what it took was technology. It took founder from the Valley. And by the way, I have to tell you this. Her first round of funding was $700,000 US. And I went back to the VCs who I know in the Valley, and I said, hey, I have this amazing founder. You have to take a call. And said, what amount is she raising? I said, 700. Is this a joke? Seriously? Because these are the folks who cut checks of $5 million minimum for a seed fund. And they thought 700K was a joke. And I said, no, this is really a serious solution. So again, I think it's a paradigm shift that's going on, and wait till other technologies like social impact and sustainability in metaverse, which is going to change everything that we do right now.
Well, she also found you, luckily, at a bus stop.
Well, I
So I
found
think
her
that-
as well.
Can I just follow
Please,
up on that
yes.
really? Because you touched on her around the 700K. I just wanted to say that it doesn't even take 700K. Sometimes what it takes is $100 to change somebody's life. For me, I get super excited and passionate when I go to the Dominican Republic and I see our girls and they're geniuses learning Python and learning all these amazing things. And when people hear about our stories, they think that, I don't know, maybe there was a big investment in the future, in the past. And there wasn't, right? It was just somebody going out there. And I'm just saying that because sometimes it just takes so little to change somebody's life. So little. And I know sometimes it's, it might not be the money, it might be also just the time, right? Not everybody could just go and, leave their job and go to a random place to dedicate their lives to it. But, maybe finding the nonprofits or the place, the organizations that that are definitely making a change is really, really important.
Thank you, Milka. That's very important. Thank you. We want to see photos and video of these girls
They're amazing.
in the metaverse
Absolutely.
next time. Okay, a bit of a pivot, but still certainly in keeping what we're discussing. More and more we see women redefining what it means to be to work, which we talked about the challenges of that as well and why that might be. At World Women Foundation, we've spent a lot of time covering the idea of the U economy, a term we use to describe the growing movement where women combine their passions and skills with new technology to generate income in innovative ways. So Sanja, start with you. How are innovations such as the gig economy changing women's entrepreneurial leadership landscape and impacting the global reset? And is the gig economy really just a cloak to what has already been happening with women trying to do part-time work in addition to everything else and take care of the kids? Not that I have a bias, but I just want to understand your thoughts.
It's a complex issue because there's a real positive story to it, and then there's a less understood, not so positive story to it. So the gig economy obviously means more freedom for women, and more economic freedom is always good because we're not starting from a place that is all that great, particularly if we look outside of the United States. So it is absolutely amazing that women can work around that schedule that is challenging and still able to bring in income and work around, limitations around children's schedule and all of that stuff. So that's all fabulous. The part of the gig economy that doesn't get talked a lot about is the lack of the support infrastructure. So most gig economy jobs don't come with health insurance or childcare benefits or sick days off. And this is where the governments really have to step in and sort of say gig economy jobs are real jobs. They're not independent contractor jobs. So if you've heard the arguments around these two sides of the coin, they tend to impact women more. Because if you see a woman who is an Uber driver and a TaskRider and has 3 other things that she's doing, the odds are none of those options, while empowering from a financial perspective, none of them come with protections and health insurance. And they tend to be women who are heads of household. That's what you typically see. So I'm sort of very divided on the issue because on one hand, I think it's fabulous that there are opportunities that don't look like 40 hours a week, have to be in a specific place and time type of jobs it means to make a living. But I think governments have to do more to ensure that these roles don't end up becoming exploitative on some level, because private businesses will never on their own decide to say, oh, you know what, we really will offer health insurance for you now. That's just not how it works. So that's my take on it. It's not always a popular one, but I think it's important to talk about this flip side because we spend a lot of time talking about how great it is, and it is, but there are certain things that I think are quite tricky about it, and those things tend to affect women more than men on average.
You did a great job summing it up. The only thing I'll say is, just like anything else, it has pros and cons. Let's not forget that the gig economy is an extension of the economy that we live in. So at the end of the day, there is currency going in the market, and it's helping the GDP of whichever country it is in, and it's creating job opportunities and making dreams come true for many, many people there. So yes, there are downsides to it, but I like to see the glass half full. and see, where can that money, actually gig economy can also be tied to the circular economy where the dollars actually flow. So a long conversation, but definitely worth exploring.
Okay, so we're on the, and how are we for time? We're good?
We have 10 minutes.
Oh, good, okay. I think we're gonna have lots of questions too, So lastly, for everyone on the panel, 2 questions, and I'll start with Shaloo, or actually we'll start with Milka, and then we'll go back. So, as a woman leading the entrepreneurial landscape, how would your vision for a #EqualFuture be? And then, as an ad, and if you could leave our audience with one action or inspiring word related to today's discussion, what would it be and why? So first and foremost, how would your vision for an equal future be?
I think my vision is probably, you know it already, is technology education for all young women and girls across the world. We've been saying for a long time that education is the key, and for the last 100 years, the countries that are poor are still poor. I think that the difference here with technology education is that, it's girls like Leo. So I have one of my students is Leo, and she is 16 years old, and she lives in a village. But she is also our best coder in our entire school, and has won a bunch of robotics competition. Now, before we say education is the key. Well, you go to school, you go to college, you get trained in systems that are not updated, and then you kind of get a job and maybe are able to give education and just live well with your family. But the difference here is that Leo, being super ambitious, she wants to be a game developer. So she will not only go to college and do very well, she might become very, very wealthy. So for me, that's it. And then the second part of your question around
An action or a word.
an action is, I think that, finding organizations around the world that are helping women learn technology is key. So if you could do that, you'd be wonderful.
So Milka and I are kindred spirits. Her vision for equal future is identical to mine. That's why I'm in venture capital, because it's my way of backing women who are building products that are at the edge. So much of what she talked about is educating girls in what are the paths that are likely to be lucrative and transformational from a 10, 20, 30-year perspective. My mom was an educator, and in our household, I would say, she was an electrical engineering professor, and that made a big difference on me. I didn't understand what electrical engineering was, but I understood that my mom worked in a male-dominated field, and for some reason, there was more prestige and money in it. That's all I could surmise at the time. But it made a difference because I was interested in things that were at the edge, and that helped me get into the career path that I eventually ended up having. And so I think it is absolutely education, but it has to be the type of education that's going to empower them to have transformative careers, transformative wealth creation, because we know, research shows that women are quite generous. So if you empower a woman, the household flourishes, they tend to fund different types of organizations, so it has a trickle-down effect that makes a really big difference on the communities that they live in. So exactly the same vision for the future. And I would say my request would be to encourage a girl to think about being her own boss. That is not something that girls get sort of pointed to as a possible option. And I think it's really important to hear that from somebody they trust.
So my vision for equal future is stop creating or stop looking at entrepreneurship as a male entrepreneurship and a female entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is basically an idea that is conceived by somebody and then it kind of develops. And if I bring that idea to you, nobody should ask me if there's a female founder behind it or if there's a male founder. And that's the true essence of entrepreneurship. So if we talk about equal future, no bias, let's start from there. It's not very hard, trust me. You look at resumes, The first thing you do is look at the name. Let's not do that. Let's just look at the talent. Let's look at the ideas that are out there. The second question was just closing thoughts.
Yeah, I'm inspired. A word or an
Yeah,
action that you want
so, we often tend to, the word entrepreneurship is synonymous with startups, right? That's how innovation. We are all entrepreneurs. I'm not a founder. That's on my wish list, hopefully in the next 5 years. But we can be leaders in our organizations and still be entrepreneurs because we gave birth to an idea and we saw it through execution. My advice is do not, please, please, please do not take no sitting down. Do not. If someone says your idea sucks, the next question you're going to ask them is, tell me why. And just don't say, okay, it's fine, it is bad, I'm sorry, I'll come back. No, please, please. I have seen so many women, especially young girls, who come just graduating from college and they join big companies. They are like, oh my God, there's free food, this is branding, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Please do not. And encourage talent, young talent who comes forward, just take them along, right?
Amazing. You're all incredibly gifted and inspiring, and it's been a pleasure moderating today. I think we're going to try and do a few questions before we're finished. Does anybody have a question for any of the panelists?
Yes.
I love everything that you've shared, and this kind of goes into some of the things that you shared before, but it sounds like to navigate a more male-dominated industry, you've had to utilize skill sets that are not necessarily the ones that are being highlighted now as the best skills for the future. So for example, the things that I'm hearing in research is compassion, humility, being able to have create a sense of belongingness, empathy. Those are the types of skills that are needed for leaders, whether you're male or female. And those are the types of things that are going to be able to help you maintain a career moving forward. And so I wonder, how can we as women, not only help bring people up in terms of these skill sets, but help to create a new standard while we're trying to also navigate just being seen and heard in a room.
Sure. So I'll be frank here. So you take what you want from it. But I certainly feel like in my career, I've had to be a chameleon of sorts. I don't think that, and this is not to say that you're inauthentic. I am who I am. So part of the frankness that you're hearing, that's always there. But I don't think some of the traits, so let's go back to Harvard Business Review, what makes an excellent leader? Compassion and empathy and being able to bring people together, those are really important, but they're not always the skills that you're using in the moment. And I see Milka nodding. That's just reality. I think empathy is incredibly important. Empathy makes you a whole lot smarter. Empathy, if you unbox it, is actually quite strategic. Being able to understand what motivates people, how you can get them to do what you feel needs to be done. It's a very strategic skill. So I would say, the kind of current leadership research is absolutely right, but the deployment of those skills very much depends on moment in time and what you're trying to do. I shared with Krista before we joined here, so how do VCs work, right? So I raised my first venture capital fund. It's very hard to do. Where does the money come from that we end up writing to then invest in startups? It comes from really wealthy individuals and institutions. So, whoever manages your mutual fund or your retirement or pension fund. So very large institutions and very wealthy individuals. None of them are women, right? They're all run by men, and they're run by men who've been in their jobs for a really long time. So would I ask them to write me a check as a first-time venture capitalist by leading with compassion and empathy? You bet not. And that's just reality, and it's okay. It's whatever it takes to get to a more equitable future, and that doesn't mean you're not authentic, but it just means there's a time and place for everything.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but could we go a little over? Are we?
One more question?
Yeah, one last question.
Okay.
Hi, this has been a very inspiring panel. Hi, I'm Sue from MediaCom in London. You have all overcome any self-doubt to achieve the amazing careers, all four of you, that you've got. When I speak to young women, I hear again and again self-doubt comes up, and it does seem to be gendered, that you find more boys that go, yeah, I can do this, and fewer women that say that. How have you overcome that self-doubt in your lives?
I'll answer that because I'll be fast. For me, is passion. Like, of course, I doubt myself, but when I see the amazing change that I am creating, then it's just everything turns around, and I'm able to just say, this is not about me, my life, the reason that I was born, it's not about me, it's about creating, spreading my mission in life. So that's what I would say.
I would say I've overcome self-doubt through many failures. And failures as in my performance review going back 15 years, the feedback to me was, you're not good in doing PowerPoints. Everything is great about you, but your PowerPoint skills are really bad. And I was like, seriously? Now challenge me on PowerPoint. Oh my God. Like, no. So self-doubt is overcome by failures. I would highly recommend anyone who's been successful forever, there's something off about you. You have to fail to just taste the sweetness of success. And I keep getting better at it. Now I'm at a point where if someone punches me, I just say, bring it on, let's have a conversation and let's get through it. But to your point, you come across young women doing this. I see myself there as well, self-doubt. In fact, my first role was at Oracle in mergers and acquisitions. And we were acquiring one of the biggest acquisitions in the software industry. And I was one of the co-leads. And I kept asking myself, well, they must be crazy. Like, why have they hired me, right? And I failed. The acquisition was actually, we had a lawsuit. It went to Department of Justice. So you can imagine. But that failure it made me who I am today, and that's the best lesson, is go out there, fail, learn, stand up, and go fail back again, and learn the lessons.
Did you want to comment anything?
Oh, go ahead. I'm an optimist at heart. I think that's just hardwired. I just assume things are going to work out just fine if I just keep at it. So I don't even think about the externalities, and if my brain goes there, I just sort of go, and I just focus on what I want. I mean, it's passion, right? I just focus on what it is that I'm trying to do, and I try to quiet all the other thoughts as much as I can. Everybody's got those thoughts, right? Monkey brain. Just tell it to go do something else.
Well, thank you very much, ladies. This was brilliant. Thank you for your great questions.